Harassment isn't always loud or obvious. In fact, some of the most damaging forms of harassment are those that blend seamlessly into the background of daily life. They don't announce themselves with shouting or threats, but instead slip quietly into the spaces between words, glances, and gestures. Sometimes it hides behind everyday actions that seem harmless to everyone but the target. A joke that lands just a little too hard, a look that lingers a moment too long, or a conversation that suddenly goes silent when you enter the room. These moments are easy to overlook, but for the person on the receiving end, they can feel like 1,000 tiny cuts. These subtle gestures, delivered with a smile or casual indifference, can be deeply unsettling, designed to control and isolate while appearing normal. The perpetrator often counts on plausible deniability, knowing that if the victim speaks up, others might dismiss their concerns as oversensitivity or paranoia. The real danger is how easily these acts are dismissed by others, leaving victims stranded in a reality no one else sees. When the harm is invisible, it's easy for bystanders to look away or even to join in, not realizing the impact of their actions or inaction. We're taught to look for clear threats, but manipulators exploit the gray areas, sending messages only the victim understands. These signals are coded, meant to unsettle and intimidate without leaving evidence. The victim is left questioning their own reality, wondering if anyone else would even believe them. This is the hidden world of narcissistic abuse, a form of psychological manipulation that thrives on both overt and covert harassment. Narcissistic abusers use a mix of charm and cruelty, alternating between public displays of friendliness and private acts of sabotage. Their tactics are designed to destabilize, isolate, and control their target, all while maintaining a facade of innocence. In the workplace, for example, a target might be systematically isolated through subtle rumors and exclusion. It starts with whispered comments or inside jokes, then escalates to being left out of meetings or group emails. The abuser may spread false narratives about the target's competence or character, encouraging others to distance themselves. Over time, the victim finds themselves alone, doubting their worth, and unsure who to trust. In community settings, these tactics can become even more organized. This is known as organized stalking, or gang stalking, where coordinated efforts are made to surveil and intimidate an individual. The victim might notice the same people or vehicles appearing wherever they go, receive anonymous messages, or find that neighbors are suddenly cold or hostile. These actions are orchestrated to make the target feel watched, unsafe, and powerless. The psychological impact is profound. Victims of narcissistic abuse and organized harassment often experience anxiety, hypervigilance, and self-doubt. The hidden nature of these abuses means that when victims try to explain what's happening, they're frequently met with disbelief or minimization. This only deepens their isolation and makes it harder to seek help. Overt covert harassment uses the ordinary to instill extraordinary fear, ringing a silent alarm only the victim can hear. Everyday places and routines become charged with anxiety, as the victim learns to anticipate the next subtle attack. This script explores how these tactics work, why outsiders struggle to believe victims, and what can be done to document and confront this hidden abuse. It's about giving voice to those who are silenced and shining a light on the patterns that so often go unnoticed. Recognizing these veiled threats is crucial, not just for victims, but for anyone who wants a safer, more just society. By learning to spot the signs, we can support those affected and challenge the culture of silence that allows harassment to thrive. Abuse doesn't need to be obvious to be real. The pain it causes is just as deep, and the consequences can last a lifetime. The unseen threat demands our attention. Only by acknowledging its presence can we begin to dismantle it and create spaces where everyone feels safe and respected. Overt covert harassment is psychological warfare in disguise. It's a battle fought not with weapons, but with subtlety and manipulation, where the lines between threat and coincidence are intentionally blurred. The victim is left questioning their own reality, unsure if what they're experiencing is real or imagined. The actions are visible, showing up in public, leaving objects, mimicking gestures, but their true meaning is hidden, understood only by the victim. These gestures are carefully chosen, designed to be noticed by the target while appearing meaningless or accidental to everyone else. The harasser's intent is to send a message that only the victim can decode, making them feel isolated and vulnerable. Each act is ambiguous, easily explained away, yet deeply personal and threatening to the target. The ambiguity is the weapon. Every incident can be dismissed as a misunderstanding, a joke, or a coincidence, leaving the victim with no clear evidence to point to. The harasser crafts a private language of symbols and repeated actions, eroding the victim's sense of safety. Over time, these small acts accumulate, creating a constant undercurrent of fear and anxiety that is difficult to escape. Outsiders see harmless oddities. The victim sees a pattern of intimidation. To everyone else, these actions seem trivial or even accidental, but to the person targeted, they are unmistakable signs of a campaign meant to unsettle and control. The genius and cruelty of this tactic is its deniability. Every act seems innocent, but together, they form a campaign of control. The victim is left with a growing sense of dread, unable to prove their experience to others, and often doubting themselves. Victims are left trying to explain the unexplainable, while the harasser hides behind social norms. Friends, colleagues, and even authorities may dismiss their concerns, making the victim feel even more alone and misunderstood. Recognizing this pattern requires looking beyond isolated incidents and trusting the victim's perspective. It means understanding that the impact of these actions is cumulative, and that the victim's intuition is often the best guide to what's really happening. This is a calculated campaign, thriving in the gray areas of social interaction. It exploits the fact that most people are unwilling to believe that such subtle cruelty can exist in plain sight. Naming it is the first step toward stopping it. By calling out the pattern and supporting those who experience it, we can begin to dismantle the power of covert harassment and restore a sense of safety and trust. A plausible deniability is the shield of the covert harasser. Every action comes with a ready excuse, just a coincidence, just waiting for a friend. This makes the harassment nearly impossible to prove, allowing it to continue unchecked. Gaslighting compounds the damage. The harasser denies, feigns innocence, and makes the victim question their own reality. "You're imagining things," they say, while systematically eroding the victim's confidence and sanity. Friends and authorities, seeing only minor incidents, may advise the victim to ignore it, further isolating them. The victim is trapped, aware of the threat, but unable to convince others. This psychological trap is no accident, it's a deliberate strategy to destabilize and control. The real harm is not just the acts themselves, but the victim's growing sense of isolation and disbelief. Picture a silent figure who appears wherever you go, at the bus stop, in the grocery store, at your favorite cafe. They're never close enough to interact, but always just within your field of vision, a constant presence that's impossible to ignore. Their face becomes familiar, not because you know them, but because you see them everywhere, woven into the fabric of your daily life. They never speak or threaten, just linger in your line of sight, always present, always watching. Their silence is deliberate, their gaze unwavering. It's a quiet persistence that seeps into your awareness, making you question if you're imagining things, or if this is something more sinister. To outsiders, it's odd but harmless. To the target, it's a chilling reminder. I know where you are, you're not safe. The world keeps moving, oblivious, while you feel the weight of eyes on you, every step shadowed by uncertainty. The harasser's timing is precise, always there when you leave for work, always nearby when you return. It's as if they've mapped your schedule, orchestrating their appearances to maximize unease. The predictability of their presence becomes a trap, making even the most mundane routines feel dangerous. If confronted, they have innocent explanations. Just walking my dog, on my way to the gym. Their alibis are plausible, their demeanor calm, making it nearly impossible to prove any malicious intent. To everyone else, they're just another face in the neighborhood. But the victim knows better. Their routines are being tracked, their sanctuary invaded. The sense of home, once a refuge, now feels exposed. Every creak of the floor, every shadow outside the window becomes a potential threat. This forces hypervigilance. Every outing becomes a search for the familiar shadow. You scan crowds, double-check reflections, and memorize faces, always on alert for that one figure who never seems far behind. The psychological toll is immense. Daily life becomes a minefield of anxiety. Simple pleasures, meeting friends, running errands, are tainted by the fear of being watched. Sleep is restless and peace of mind feels out of reach. The harasser never needs to speak. Their presence alone is enough to control and intimidate. Their silence is a weapon, their consistency a form of psychological warfare. The power lies in repetition and the unspoken message. Each encounter reinforces the threat, making it harder to dismiss as coincidence. This is harassment that hides in plain sight, devastating precisely because it's so easily dismissed. The world sees nothing unusual, leaving the victim isolated in their fear. The victim's world shrinks, their sense of safety eroded by a campaign of silent intimidation. Social circles grow smaller, and the urge to retreat becomes overwhelming. The threat is real, even if no one else sees it. For the victim, every day is a battle to reclaim a sense of normalcy, to prove to themselves that their fear is justified, and to hope that, one day, the shadow will finally disappear. For victims, overt covert harassment is a private nightmare, each coincidence a coded threat. A familiar face at a new job, a symbolic object left on the doorstep, These are not accidents, but messages. The result is constant anxiety, hypervigilance, and exhaustion. Victims question their own perceptions. Am I overreacting? Is this real? Gaslighting and disbelief from others deepen the isolation, making it harder to trust anyone, including themselves. Daily routines become sources of dread. The world feels hostile and unpredictable. Social withdrawal is common, as explaining the experience feels impossible. The joy of everyday life fades, replaced by persistent fear. The true damage is psychological: a shrinking world, a loss of trust, and a relentless sense of being hunted. One of the hardest parts for victims is not being believed. Outsiders see only isolated minor incidents. Easy to explain away, easy to dismiss. Without the context or history, the pattern is invisible to everyone but the target. Society expects harassment to be obvious. Subtle intimidation doesn't fit the mold. Well-meaning advice, just ignore it, only deepens the victim's isolation. The disbelief compounds the trauma, making victims reluctant to seek help. Understanding this dynamic is key to supporting those affected. Empathy and a willingness to listen are the first steps toward breaking the cycle of disbelief. The psychological wounds of covert harassment run deep. Victims live in a state of constant alert, scanning for threats, unable to relax. Anxiety, insomnia, and depression are common, as is social withdrawal. The world becomes a landscape of triggers, every routine a potential risk. Gaslighting fractures self-trust, leaving victims doubting their own sanity. Many develop symptoms of PTSD, flashbacks, nightmares, and a persistent sense of danger. The targeted nature of the abuse creates profound personal violation and loss of trust. The harasser's impunity adds to the sense of injustice and anger. These invisible injuries are real, lasting, and devastating. Why do perpetrators choose these subtle tactics? It's about control, instilling fear while avoiding consequences. Plausible deniability keeps them safe from legal or social repercussions. The ambiguity isolates the victim, making it harder to get help. Some harassers derive satisfaction from the victim's distress and confusion. The more isolated the target, the easier they are to control. These tactics are chosen because they're effective, insidious, and hard to prove. The predator's greatest weapon is the victim's isolation. Trust your intuition. Unease is a valid warning, even if others don't see the threat. Look for patterns, not isolated incidents. Document everything: dates, times, locations, and your feelings. This record can reveal the bigger picture and help if you seek legal or professional support. Direct confrontation is risky. Focus on your safety. Vary routines, enhance security, and inform trusted allies. Don't try to reason with the harasser. Prioritize your well-being. Seek support from those you trust: friends, family, or a therapist experienced in trauma. Professional help can validate your experience and offer coping strategies. Domestic violence organizations may have resources for subtle harassment, even if it's not from a partner. Awareness is the best defense. Harassment can whisper, not just shout. If you're targeted, you're not imagining it, and you're not alone. Support starts with belief, yours and others.